What is Walker Kessler's peak and how close is he to that ceiling?
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Jazz. My name's Leif Thulin. I'm excited as always to have the opportunity to fill in for David Locke and talk to you guys on Locked On Jazz. As you guys may know by now, I'm a lifelong Jazz fan who's credentialed NBA draft analyst for Locked On NBA, big board attendee of the 2023 and 2024 NBA Combines, Jazz broadcast assistant and statistician, lover of college hoops. So don't expect all the geeky numbers of usual to be gone, but I'll bring you unique perspective as a diehard college hoops fan who knows a lot about the young players in the NBA and those who are coming up next, and a Jazz employee and a lover of the Jazz. So I wanted the best for the Jazz just like you do. So I'll try my best to make you as knowledgeable as possible about your Utah Jazz in a critical juncture in Jazz franchise history. Thanks for making Locked On Jazz your first listen each and every day. And remember, Locked On Jazz is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube at Locked On Jazz, where the best way to help us grow is comment anything below. And today's question is, what do you see as Walker Kessler's ceiling? Please let me know what you guys think, and I'll try to get back to you. By the way, your favorite podcast now has a newsletter, including the Locked On Jazz daily newsletter, one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. That's lockedondaily.com, and start your day with an all-new free Locked On Jazz newsletter. Today, in the first segment, I'll outline how good Walker Kessler has been this season, how good he has become. In the second segment, I'll discuss what the feasible ceiling outcomes are for Walker Kessler and what it actually means for the Utah Jazz. And in the final segment, I'll break down the recent performances of VJ Edgecombe, a player who is a candidate to be drafted within the top 5, and he is surging right now, and the Jazz certainly will have taken note. So let's dive right in. Walker Kessler has been great this year, and it feels especially good because there were so many skeptics after his amazing rookie year that had him on the first team, and then he seemed to take a step back in terms of confidence and in terms of production in his second year. And everyone said, oh, sophomore slump. Derek Lively looks better and maybe just centers look good initially. Well, it's been wonderful to see Walker Kessler have the confidence back. For those of you who don't remember, last year he started the beginning of the year, was benched, and he seemed to be lower on the totem pole, out of favor, and just generally lacking confidence at different junctures last season. So what changed? The whole time he was blocking shots, and the rest of his game looked less assertive. And, maybe it was less assertive because he had a blissfully ignorant rookie year where he was excellent because he didn't know any better. There was no expectations, and all he did was go out there and try hard. And that's what you're asking. Now there's weight to it and expectations and debunking those negative thoughts about how his performances were worse in year 2 than year 1. And there's all that, and he's shining. He's doing it at an unbelievable level right now. Kessler is averaging 11.3 points per game, 11.8 rebounds per game, shooting 71.5% from the field, and accumulating 2.4 blocks per game. It's wonderful. For those of you who like kind of records and just the top of the stats, Walker Kessler leads the league in offensive rebound percentage as well. It's a kind of a nerdy one for you. He gets 16.6% of offensive rebounds. He also leads the league in effective field goal percentage, which is it puts weight into the percentage of both the shots you make around the rim, like the majority of his, but also knocking down a few threes, and Kessler's made a few threes. And then here's one that I think means the most. Since entering the league in 2022 and 2023, Kessler has totaled 429 blocks in just 180 games played. His 429 blocks are third most among any NBA player in that span. So in 3 years, he's been that good. The guys ahead of him are Brook Lopez, who's around 480, and Victor Wembanyama just surpassed Walker Kessler in 2 years, 1.5 even. The dude's unbelievable. He's an alien. But regardless, to be in that rarefied air shows just how good of a defender Walker Kessler is. For the everydayers, you probably know David Locke mentioned how Kessler is already a top 10, top 15 defender in a podcast. If you didn't listen, go check it out. It was excellent, breaking down Kessler's effectiveness on the court on both ends, but particularly talking numbers that back up how good of a defender Walker Kessler is. And like I said, the numbers do back it up, and his energy has been insanely present and contagious as of late, and drawing rave reviews from Will Hardy and even teammates in post-game interviews, especially in this great stretch of play where the Jazz are playing their best basketball of the season. Now, after year 1, we expected a great rim protector for years to come, and we've largely gotten it, but he's noticeably improved at fighting for position and not falling for as many fakes, which either take him out of the play as he falls past a pump fake and it lets a layup happen, or maybe his guy gets a second chance off of a miss, or worse, lead to fouls. That's a big leap. So let's switch to offense, where his leap to me is even more noticeable because there was more to notably improve upon that you can notice watching him as a fan and not work with him every day. You can say, oh, like he can get better at that. Whereas, there's a lot of nuances to blocking shots, and I think he's even gotten better at that, but he was unbelievable to start with. So it's not as present and prevalent of a leap. Okay, so we're going to talk about that offensive leap. To me, the biggest place where he started the improvement is he was not a good screen setter at the beginning of his career. And while it's not Quinn Snyder level of meticulous offense, needing perfect angles for screens that Gobert perfected and made the Jazz's offense spectacular in those years, Kessler has improved vastly at setting screens and timing his rolls. So he lets the guard gain an advantage by giving them a screen at the angle that is most conducive to success, and then rolls on time, allowing himself or other players to be more open. And it's become more noticeable, especially with the amazing ability that Isaiah Collier has to penetrate and see players. So he and John Collins certainly have been recipients of a lot of lobs and a lot of open looks because of Isaiah Collier's innate ability to see things that few guards of the Jazz have had, especially in the recent years, but in all of their history, honestly, have been able to see. He's becoming a monster on the offensive glass, as demonstrated by leading offensive rebound percentage in the entire NBA and getting boards. And once he collects the board, I guess I should say, you're going to be tall, you're going to grab some rebounds. Like, that's never been an issue. But he's become a far better rebounder, and the stats back it up, as I'd said. But also, when he grabs the board, he's far more assertive. He's so much stronger and more aggressive, putting it back up for putbacks or kicking out to shooters. And not only is he more aggressive grabbing the rebound, he's very decisive in making the decision of whether to shoot the next one, pass the next one out, and makes a more aggressive move that gets him either a bucket or to the free throw line. So the Jazz perform well in second chance points, and a lot of that is due to the stellar rebounding of Walker Kessler. But that leads me to assess how good he really is. So you must allow me to give you some context and categorize what type of big he is, because there's a lot of different types of big men in today's NBA, and Walker Kessler isn't going to be pigeonholed in the same thing as a guy like Domantas Sabonis. So let me explain how good he is now, and then I'll touch more on how good can Walker Kessler be with the context given of the different types of bigs there are. Walker Kessler is a defensively oriented energy big. Like, that's what he is. That's different than some of the guys with the wild ceilings that we'll dive further into. And we'll talk about all those in the next segment, but I want to outline that you cannot compare him to Domantas Sabonis, other than the fact that they both are big guys. They're totally different basketball players. But Walker Kessler has bought into his role of being a defensively oriented energy big who gets energy baskets and rebounder, lunge pail type rebound baskets, as well as maybe an occasional scripted three, an occasional scripted play for him. But Rudy Gobert did all of what he did within the Jazz uniform, largely not having plays scripted for him. Kessler's bought into that role and has excelled. He's drawn loads of praise for running the floor and being a rim runner, which gets him looks from the pace of Isaiah Collier, the play of Keontae George, where both of them have had multiple double-digit assist games recently. And it opens up the floor as well for others because he puts pressure on the rim, makes the defense adjust to where he is on the floor with vertical lob spacing, and leaves corners open. He's also become a better finisher and a more physical presence, which has enabled him to snare 4.5 offensive rebounds per game. And so that, yes, he plays a lot of minutes, but that tells you how many rebounds he's getting, not just the percentage when he's in. He's a starter. It's not just a spot rebounder of the likes of, this is not meant as a shot. Oscar Sheba is a tremendous rebounder, one of the best in the world, but he's not in the game very often to show you how frequently he can get those rebounds. Walker Kessler is in the game enough and gets the rebounds that frequently, showing tremendous fitness and energy. So that's what Walker Kessler is. He's an energetic guy. This is what Walker Kessler is and will be. And you're only in year 3. So you're seeing double-double averages with top 10, top 15 defense. That's a very, very good basketball player. I'd rank within the top 15, top 16 centers in the NBA. And while that may sound maybe a little bit mundane, saying top 15, oh yeah, he's top half, you may be kind of thinking to yourself, if you look at the list of the big guys, it's really not that mundane. There are a lot of spectacular bigs, and not all of them are in the same avenue as Walker Kessler. So coming up next, we're going to dive into just how good Walker Kessler can be and where does that place him in the hierarchy of bigs once he reaches that level. Football season may be over, but the basketball action is just heating up, and there's no better way to get in on the excitement than with Prize Picks, the best place for fantasy sports. It's simple. Just pick more or less on at least two player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Yeah, 1,000 times your cash. With Prize Picks, you control the action all season long. This week, you could look at Jason Tatum for more than 29 points and Anthony Edwards for more than 25. Those are the stars of the game, and you can talk about them and place your picks on them and root for them. What I love about Prize Picks is how quick and easy they make it to make picks. It takes less than 60 seconds to set your lineup. Plus, they're fast and secure withdrawals, meaning I get paid in as little as 15 minutes when I win. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. And I also want to tell you about Intercap Lending. You know them. We've talked about them for years. One of the largest independent lending companies. They're extremely responsive. They embrace change. There's so many testimonials of excellent borrow experience. But what you may not know is it's in 44 states, not just within the state of Utah, but they make you feel like it's a small company despite being an enormous one because of how truly well they understand what you're asking for and how they prioritize your needs. So you can service your own loan. They have excellent testimonials, as I mentioned, of long-term relationships and great satisfied results. So it's better for the consumer. And by the way, we have our own guy. Steve Carter's our personal loan officer for Locked On Jazz. So make sure to call him at 385-800-8528. That's 385-800-8528. So make sure to tell him you are part of Locked On Jazz and you listen daily and get the corporate discount. Intercap Lending, NMLS number 190-465. For more information, visit intercaplending.com. All righty, welcome back to Locked On Jazz. I'm Leif Thulin with you here, filling in for David Locke during the All-Star break. So like I said, Walker Kessler is an archetype of a big in the same vein as his predecessor, Rudy Gobert, who I'd categorize as a rim-running energy big whose best offense comes as a lob threat after being a screen setter, and his truest value comes as a rim-protecting defensive extraordinaire. I think you could say that they are similar in what their archetypes are. Rudy Gobert obviously reached heights that Walker Kessler has yet to attain and may never reach. But Rudy Gobert has won 4 Defensive Player of the Years, which is a feat very, very few players have attained, especially in the more modern realm of the NBA. And of course, there's let me back up here. Inherently, there's value in high percentage shots. Enter the best field goal percentage for Walker Kessler and the best true shooting in the NBA. It's excellent. You love to get high percentage shots. And of course, there's value in protecting the basket. No one knows it more than us who are spoiled by Rudy Gobert, single-handedly raising the Jazz to being a top 5 defense. Like, he was the only good defender on those teams. And with his drop coverage saying, funnel your guys to me, and I'll do it all, made the Jazz a good defense because no one else individually was playing well defensively, and Rudy Gobert made it all possible. We know it's exceedingly valuable, and we know Kessler only right now trails the best generation, the best defender of this upcoming generation in the alien Victor Wembanyama. So we know Walker Kessler is a really good defender. But the reason I bring that all up is that archetype may not have as much top tier value as some of the other bigs in today's NBA. So how high is the upper echelon of NBA centers? How high in that upper echelon of NBA centers can Walker Kessler reach? That's the question. How high on the totem pole can Walker Kessler reach? Let's answer that first by predicting his peaks numbers. And these are numbers that I think are certainly not modest by projections because they're great numbers, but I don't think are that crazy either. My guess is between somewhere around 15 points per game and 13 rebounds with 2 to 5 to 3 blocks. And that would be massive. Right now, like I said, he's around 11 points, 12 rebounds. So 4 points more and a rebound more. That's attainable. That's attainable. And he's at 2.4 blocks right now. So 2.5 to 3 doesn't seem insane, but teams are respecting how good he is at blocking shots and making it hard for him to reach more than 2.4 a game because they don't shoot near him. He changes shot charts. And so that would be very good in terms of counting stats. Very good. And if on a really good team, you would hope he's with in terms of you'd hope in the next 3 years Walker Kessler can get near these stats on the Utah Jazz, and there would be a chance to be an all-star because if you're really good and you put up those numbers, then you get rewarded. We saw Rudy Gobert go to a couple all-star games or be all NBA with statistics that aren't too dissimilar. But I'm here to tell you there are a lot of really good Western Conference bigs. And I think it gets precarious to say you expect an all-star for Walker Kessler, even if he put up those numbers, because just think about this. Wemby's a lock every year. He is unreal. And while Joker is still in the league, Jokic is the best in the world. Like, I don't care that people are saying SJ is the MVP. Jokic is putting up a 30-point triple-double. So he's an all-star. Chet didn't play enough this year to qualify, but he's superb. And at the beginning of the year, you can make an argument he's a top 5 center in the league. Şengün made it over Sabonis. And let me tell you, Sabonis's ho-hum numbers of 20 points, 15 rebounds, and 6 assists on 60% shooting from the field. That's what Walker Kessler is going to be dealing with for years to come. I know there's a couple other guys I still haven't said. People believe Derek Lively is going to break through and make it. Well, he's in the same vein as Walker Kessler. That'll be a true test to see who's better. But then there's still Anthony Davis, who's Derek Lively's new teammate. Jaren Jackson in recent polls has been as high as 6th most likely to win the MVP. And that's another big guy. I know he's the power forward right now, but it's still clogging the big guys in the terms of the Western Conference. It's going to be hard. Long story short, saying Kessler's going to be an all-star is hard to believe with confidence, but that isn't a slight to Walker Kessler whatsoever. And if he should make it at any point, it would be a true testament to how much he's improved and how well he's playing, and likely meaning the Jazz are really good. So you really want to see Walker Kessler reach those levels. So the peak I want to see, though, that is attainable and I think is more important than the hardware of making an all-star or the all defensive numbers, which of course he wants to get. I believe the following is attainable and perhaps the most important. Gordy Chiage, I reference him pretty often. He was a coach under Jerry Sloan. He also coached collegiate basketball. He coached for the Supersonics, did some front office stuff. One of the best chats and honestly best humans I've met in my brief time in the world of basketball. He told me the way to view players and how good they truly are, and if not the best of the best, if you're not Michael Jordan, you're probably not viewed this way. But if you're guarding Michael Jordan, you are. And if you're not the best of the very best, it's the way to evaluate them is how often can they battle the best of the very best and limit them. And a playoff series, say you go 6 or 7 games, can you win your battle against Chet Holmgren if you're Walker Kessler 2 out of 6 or 2 out of 7 times and help the Jazz win those 2 games and perhaps win the series because you've limited a guy that is perceived to be better than you? Can Walker Kessler out-rebound and limit the effectiveness of Alperen Şengün? Can he do so against Sabonis in a playoff series and put the Jazz in a great position to win those games by limiting their star and punishing them enough on the offensive side where he scores enough and makes them work hard enough on defense to make them a little less, though both those guys are obviously offensively gifted players. They're both awesome offensive players, but defensively are slightly inept. Can you put enough pressure on them when you're on offense to make them work defensively and tire them out a little bit in the course of a playoff series? That's what matters about Walker Kessler. Can he reach a level where he consistently, in years where the Jazz make the playoffs with hopefully the likes of Cooper Flagg or whomever they may draft, can he reach a level to punish those type of players and outplay a center on the opposing front line by enough that you think, man, that guy's really, really good. He may not be an all-star, but he's got the respect of the other team, and he's got the respect of the country watching him play and the world watching him play and says, wow, like that guy played well enough to put the Jazz in a position to win the series because he limited a guy who's perceived to be better than him. That's what I want to see from Walker Kessler. And I see that as a possibility. I don't think that's crazy. And I know all stars and all defensive teams are tangible things you want to say for someone's peak, but I believe this is even more important. And I believe he can and will achieve these things should the Jazz find a way to reach the playoffs, because Walker Kessler's a competitor. He works super hard, and you've seen that work pay off, and his energy in the daily game and his fitness. He's running up and down the floor like a madman. He's a track star of a center. And I think that type of energy and attitude, determination, the way he attacks each and every game right now will pay dividends in the future. So, should he be able to achieve these things on the biggest stage? That's reaching the peak. Speaking of performance on the brightest stages, well, I'm going to talk to you guys about the recent stellar play of a potential top 5 pick, VJ Edgecombe of Baylor, coming up next. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes have you waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then wondering, waiting, and worrying some more. Now, taxes, it's matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will provide and find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. That's guaranteed. So all you can do is get the most money back, guaranteed. They make it easy for you. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is taxes. Get an expert now on turbotax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at turbotax.com/guarantees. Welcome back to Lockdown Jazz. I'm Leif Thulin. We discussed how great Walker Kessler can become, but to make the playoffs, the Jazz need not only Walker Kessler to show what he can do at battling the premier bigs, but they need a star to help push the Jazz forward into a trajectory that they haven't had the last couple of years since trading a star like Donovan Mitchell, since trading Rudy Gobert. So I know Jazz fans would be disappointed to land outside the top 2, especially after I outlined in a previous episode for the everydayers what percentages dictate about the likelihood of drafting your star when you start falling down the draft. And I know 4 is not super low, but 1 yields 60+%, 2 about 50, or 3 about 50, 2 about 40, and then 4 is when you start to see the numbers drop. So there's a guy now that likely lands within the top 4 in VJ Edgecombe. The Jazz currently have a 52% chance of landing within the top 4. VJ Edgecombe, for those of you who do not know, is a guard from Baylor who had an amazing summer leading the Bahamas national team, which had pros. It had Buddy Hield, Eric Gordon, DeAndre Ayton. All of those guys, I would say, are offensively oriented and very good offensive players in the NBA. Well, he led them in scoring in the pre-Olympics games where he was practicing with the team and he was playing with the team and he was their best player. So then he did all that, and you thought, okay, you got a top 4 guy. He started terribly in college, but since has been fantastic. It's been a true Jekyll and Hyde. I initially said on Locked On NBA Big Board with Rafael Barlow, I'm bothered by his lack of true shooting ability. His shooting guard size isn't ideal. I don't think he's quite the 6'5", 6'6" he's rumored to be. And the main appeal is just rebounding and tremendous athleticism, which he's turned into defense. Since then, he started Big 12 play, and he's been a monster, an absolute monster for Baylor, who just played Arizona, and I paid close attention to that matchup, and I'll give you some observations, but first some stats that'll tell you what I'm tell you what I am talking about in terms of his development from the first bit of the season to Big 12 play. And for those of you who don't know and aren't big college basketball fans, the Big 12 has a reputation that they've had for the past 10 years as being the most advanced defensive league, that they take away the drive in the paint, that they play super physically and have a lot of quick guards that are going to make it difficult to reach the paint. And once you do reach the paint, most of these teams have rim protection. And he's been a monster and has really dispelled those notions about Big 12 defenses. So I paid close attention to the game against Arizona. In 14 Big 12 games, he scores 17.4 points per game, hitting 47% from the field, knocking down about 2 threes per game at around 42% clip. And he makes 86% of his free throws. And boy, does he make a living at the free throw line. He also nabs 1.8 steals per game. And now we can get to the true allure as a top pick, because you may ask, like I did, how can a guy go from struggling in non-conference play to that dude in conference play? because usually there's not a huge acclimation period. Like if you're that guy, you're that guy. And that's what bothered me about VJ Edgecombe, because I thought he could be that guy after the Bahamas and I didn't see it. But I'll give you a simple reason that I didn't factor in is they had too many guys who like the ball in their hands with Baylor. A couple injuries and just the natural course of the season has provided a hierarchy change and said, you know what, this guy's better and thrives with the ball in his hands. And Jeremy Roach missed some time. None. One of their other guards, not particularly gifted with the ball in his hands. So the two freshmen, Rob Wright and VJ Edgecombe, have had the ball in their hands more frequently and are certainly more comfortable. And while VJ Edgecombe was uncomfortable fitting in, he has thrived standing out. That's what he's done really well, and that's what you want. You want your guy to have this alpha demeanor, and maybe he didn't have it initially, and there was an assimilation period where he really had to figure out what to do and make himself useful while other guys had the ball. Well, now he's getting the ball and he's showing what he can do. They're saying, "Hey VJ, go get us a basket," and that's what you want. Now, even with poor spacing, Baylor does not shoot the ball particularly well, and they don't have a very big team. I don't love the way their team's built. It's a little bit of a tangent, but he gets to the rim and levitates when he gets there. When he gets to the rim, he soars through the air. And that brings me to the game I studied last night. Baylor lost to Arizona at Baylor. It was a close game. It was physical. And Baylor lost to a team in Arizona that's very stout defensively and has tons of size all over the court. They play two centers together, meaning on a shrunken court, it'll be hard to get there. And once you do, difficult to score because Baylor's not a very well-connected offensive team. And, Arizona played two NBA-level wing defensive athletes on VJ Edgecombe all night, one of whom is named Carter Bryant, who I would absolutely love the Jazz to take a gander at to select with Minnesota's pick that the Jazz have this year, because he's 6'9", shoots a pretty ball, and can really, really move his feet. And he also makes the right plays. He had 6 assists yet last night, and he doesn't play that often because they have upperclassmen in front of him. But my point being is there's a guy that I would consider taking in the lottery that guarded him, and then another guy who's even more well-regarded as a defensive player who named KJ Lewis, who I believe will be on the all-defensive team in the Big 12. Those are who guarded VJ Edgecombe. I give that context to tell you they guarded VJ Edgecombe. They're one of the best defensive teams in the country, and VJ got to the rim at will. At will. VJ had 24. He got to the line 14 times. And one thing that I think is really important to note is all very good NBA scorers get to the line. And they do it in different ways. It can be with guile. It can be with pure force. It can be with head fakes and some cheap stuff that Chris Paul frustrates people with and all that. Or it can just be straight line. I'm going to get to the rim, and you can't do anything about me flying over your head, and you can only foul. That's what VJ Edgecombe did last night. He shot 6 of 13 from the field and actually shot it pretty poorly from deep, going 1 of 6 in this game, which dropped his percentage to about 42.5% in Big 12 play. And meaning when he did get to the rim, he was 5 of 8 from 2. And many were getting it all the way to the rim effortlessly. In transition, he didn't really get to do much because they got back. That was the concerted effort. So with the set defense, he still got to the rim, all the way to the rim, dunked, got layups, Euro steps, all the things that you'd look for in terms of ease of getting to the rim and putting rim pressure. He checks that box unbelievably well. Like, believe me, that is bold and in Sharpie. Rim pressure. He glides, and he's in the rarefied air of 1% athlete. So every player in the NBA is a 1 percentile athlete, a first percentile athlete, or 99th, whichever way you want to look at it. But he's in the 1% of 1% athletes that are in the NBA. He is that rare. He's in the likes of Amen and Osar Thompson, dudes that just float effortlessly, and the explosiveness is astounding. Now, I'll offer 2 perspectives, and I tweeted as much, so you may have seen this if you guys are really dedicated Jazz fans. I said, if he can do all that athletically, why does he not separate and get other shots and demonstrate that capacity that would make him a can't-miss guy? And the alternate perspective was made known by Tony Jones. Tony Jones, you may know, beat writer for the Jazz, writes for The Athletic, excellent guy. And he said in response to me saying he kind of launches himself at the rim and draws fouls, which is great, but I haven't seen him do much else in this game in terms of non-transition bucket getting. He just gets downhill. Like, I know that's a good thing, and I made sure to say that, but what else is there? And Tony replied simply, that stuff will come with age. His raw ability right now is eye-catching, and that it was. So that's giving you two perspectives that are both just watching and saying, you know what, you don't see that every day. And Tony and I watch way too much basketball. And VJ Edgecombe's athleticism is something you do not see every day. You do not see every month. You don't see every year. So we agreed the ball handling is not up to snuff right now for a guy that you want to be your guy. But that seems attainable to fix more so than, the jump shot percentages or something like that. The percentages on the jump shot and the free throw line are wonderful, especially against the best competition he's played. He's shooting 86% from the free throw line, getting there all the time. He's shooting 43% from three, and he's shooting plenty of those, hitting over 2 per game. And we talked about volume being a good indicator. There's a lot of volume given to him. And he's, like I mentioned, he's in a crowded backcourt. So he shot 14 free throws and scored 24 points against real deal athletes on a very good defensive team in the collegiate basketball. So is the potential greater than we thought because he just needs to hone in that craft of isolation ball handling as opposed to just someone who punishes closeouts and attacks, gets to the rim and makes either open threes or gets to the rim and slashes viciously, I should add, because my goodness, is he an athlete. I had my concerns. I talked about this in an episode earlier this week about, hey, maybe he's not a number one because of that ineptitude right now with the ball handling. But if you can do that with that ineptitude on a shrunken court against a huge front line, Arizona employs a front line of a guy who's 7'2", a guy who's 6'11", and built like an absolute brick. And they play both those guys along with two wings that I said are NBA caliber athletes and defenders, and then a 6'5" guard. I believe that you can find a way to hone in on that craft, become a better ball handler, a better separator, someone who can create and use his downward ability to create space stepping back. Like Donovan Mitchell was thought of as a slasher, and now we know him as a guy who leads the Jazz in franchise history in terms of made threes per game and made threes in a season because he's such a good slasher. He can step back and shoot threes. Think of guys in the NBA that do that. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, for example, goes downhill to get to his mid-range jump shot and vice versa. I've started to wonder if VJ Edgecombe has more star ability than I maybe had thought, because I have done a full 180 from where I was saying his shot didn't look good. His form does look better. I want to say that. I didn't think his shot looked good, and his best assets looked to be just sheer athleticism, and he wasn't doing it scoring. He was just grabbing rebounds like from 15 feet in the air and just plucking them and coming down. So can his rise continue both moving up the boards and in terms of sheer productivity and live up to the lofty expectations he had coming in after a great season in the Bahamas? And he earned even a comparison from Fran Fraschilla, who covers the Big 12, of Dwayne Wade. Can he continue to improve his game and set up other things using his athleticism as the main threat to set up secondary threats of mid-range jump shots, step back threes, live ball facilitating? The world's his oyster. The guy's really, really good at basketball, and he's showing it in a very competitive league. And Baylor's not a great team, but VJ Edgecombe's must-watch material. So I still wonder about the ability to be the main guy. I haven't been all the way sold on that. And that's what you want at the top of the draft. So feel free to be skeptical. But I'll acknowledge he's rising up boards. He's rising up my board. He's rising up every board I've seen. And I would say right now he's probably the most likely guy in the NBA draft to go number 4. So that's someone the Jazz fans should really keep an eye on. And I'll be going right after finishing this down to Provo to watch Yegor Demon and BYU play against Kansas. So I may have a scouting report on Yegor Demon, so BYU fans may enjoy that. But also, it's a player that Jazz fans have had their eye on because of the connections between Danny Ainge and BYU. And it's, of course, a local player. So I'm going to try to keep these player profiles rolling in. Thank you guys for making this your first listen. And with your next tune into Locked On NBA Big Board, hear more, maybe conflicting thoughts on VJ Edgecombe from Raphael and James Barlow, and more about guys throughout this draft. And also, I want to remind you guys, your favorite podcast now has a newsletter introducing Locked On Jazz Daily Newsletter, one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with an all-new free Locked On Jazz newsletter. Thank you guys for listening. As always, it's always a pleasure.